Welcome to Loremaster's Lair. I am your Loremaster, and today we have a big episode before us. When I started, I began by looking at the generals of the world of Galarian. However, when I made my first foray into the gods last week, I realized there was one topic that needs to be covered to get basis for many other topics. The planes. Especially if I'm going to be talking about gods, I need to talk about the places where they have dominion over. That being said, there's about 18 main planes, so I'm not going to have you all listen to me talk for an hour, at least all at once. So today, we'll be looking through the inner planes, or at least part of them. We have a lot before us, so let's get started. First, we're going to have to talk about how we'll be looking at these planes. I will, of course, mainly be focusing on the lore, but to understand the place, one needs to understand what it's like to be there. To do this, I will also list out various planar traits to help bring the world into focus. These traits were laid out in the 1E core rulebook Planar Adventures. Actually, it being the most complete guide we have towards the planes, it's also a good resource not just for information for this episode, but whenever we bring up the deity's realms. So, the traits start with gravity. Whether they're the same as the material plane, heavier, lighter, no gravity, objective directional, or subjective directional. The first one need no explanation. Directional gravity is normal gravity that doesn't go down, with objective being the same throughout the plane, or subjective being a creature decides for themselves which way gravity pulls them. Next, time, which can be normal, flowing, erratic, or timeless. I shall also show numbers for these two, but normal, flowing, erratic, or timeless. Normal is the same as the material plane. Flowing is a constant speed, either faster or slower. Erratic has the time flow randomly. And timeless, time still flows but has no effect. One does not age or need food or sleep while there. But if they leave a timeless plane for one that does have time, it hits them all at once, usually to a bad effect. Third is the size of the plane, which is either finite, immeasurable, or unbound. Finite has places where it ends. Immeasurables are either infinite in size or go large enough that it is basically infinite. And unbound is where it loops back on itself when you go far enough in a certain direction. Next, we have the structure of the plane, which can be lasting, morphic, sentient, or static. Lasting remains as it is unless acted upon by outside forces, normal laws of physics style. Morphic can be changed easily. Sentient changes as the living will of the plane itself, and static does not change, especially to outside forces. The human in a ghost world philosophy. Essence and alignment are what they say on the tin, which is, they are the basic foundation of what you're most likely to find in abundance. For essence, it can be fire, wind, water, earth, negative energy, or positive energy. For alignment, it can be lawful, chaotic, good, evil, neutral, or two of them. They can also be expressed strongly or weakly. Finally, how the magic works. Magic can be normal, enhanced, impeded, dead, limited, or wild. I should probably the most unprofessional show on the internet. Normal does not have any explanation. Enhanced and impeded usually are limited to certain magics and tied back to essence and alignment. Limited requires limited was 5. Limited required certain qualifications to be met before it can be used. Dead means no magic, and wild means that it's time to crack out your wild magic tables, basically. Well, now that I've gone through the basics of everything, let's look at it practically, starting with one all measurements are based off, the material plane. This is the plane where all universe is. Gravity, time, and magic are normal. Structure is lasting, because the laws of physics are fixed. Essence is fixed, not favoring one element over another, and alignment is none. Finally, the plane is immeasurable. Because the large size of the universe, I'm not sure how long I'm going to do finger counting thing. Not sure how much I like it. But the traits aren't so bad when you actually put it like that, right? Either way, the material plane was created by the gods for the purpose of testing souls, to give them a lifetime which to make decisions and show where they belong across the many planes of the afterlife. Since we are talking about planes, one thing that should be mentioned is that the material plane directly overlaps with three other planes: the first world, the shadow plane, and the ethereal plane. All planes we'll be covering next week. The first world and shadow plane are pole off-center by the positive and negative energy planes respectively. And the ethereal plane is the ghost of our world. Finally, let us look at the gods outside the material plane. We'll not be going into too much detail about the individuals. That is for their own videos. This is just to give one an idea of where everything fits together. This is also not as extensive list because we don't know everything. There would be, and even if we didn't know everything, that would be something I would miss even if I made an hour-long video. So, the only of the main gods who preside on Golarion is Gosra. This is not surprising considering they are the personification of the fury of nature. One other standout is Erasne, who is currently a lich and therefore holds her dominion under protest. For demigods, we have Kami Lords, Onidamio, and Rakshasa Immortals. Finally, two groups that don't exist on Golarion, but elsewhere in the universe, are the Great Old Ones and the Elder Gods, residing in the darkness between stars. Though there is one more god that needs to be mentioned. An obscure enough goddess that this will be today's first side tangent, where we wake up long forgotten gods for a quick bite. Or 1,000. Today's standout is Kittumu, the goddess of fireflies, hibernation, and swarms. She first appeared in the adventure path Skull of the Serpent. Specifically, the Pathfinder journal story in that path, Plague of Light. For new players, the Pathfinder journal stories were 6-part short stories that came with the adventure paths, right around the toolbox area. Either way, Kitsumu is a goddess from Gurund, one of the few we have gotten so far. She sleeps in a pyramid deep in the jungles of the Mwagni Expanse, only to wake up every now and then to snack by sending a plague of fireflies to kill people piece by piece. Did I mention she was chaotic evil? Some amount of power she has been shown to have include stopping storms besides those of fireflies from forming within close proximity of her temples, and potential spoilers for the journal story for those who actually care about them, have children who are 3-foot-long fireflies who spend their larval stage disguised as human children. As for everything else, she was never given anything more than a stat block in the book Inner Sea Gods, as she one of the many gods to confuse people who not caught up on the lore. But one last thing I should mention is that in the story, it's mentioned that the gods of Gurund are closer to the humans. Considering Gaza tends to be associated with Grund in the artwork, there is the living children god Walkena. Grund is said to be where human life on the planet began, and there's lots of dense rainforest we have only really scratched the surface of. I wouldn't be surprised if most of the gods native to the material plane, and Glorian, live hidden deep within the Mwagni. Now that we have gone through one plane, we can finally start with the main topic for this video. The inner planes, or elemental planes, are planes which, according to the cosmology, are separated from the outer planes by the astral plane. Specifically, outside of the material plane and three others, the inner planes are most associated with one of the elemental essences. There are a limited number of gods in today's episode, as most gods tend to favor the outer planes, but we will have a few interesting ones which we will keep to the end. Going by the order they are said to circle the material plane, first is the plane of air. Compared to the material plane, time is normal, structures lasting, the rim is immeasurable. Also, the alignment is mildly neutral instead of none. But that is common. The material plane is the choosing ground for the gods after all. Alignment is special for us. Essence, as one would expect, is air dominant, with magic for air being enhanced, magic for earth being impeded. Finally, gravity is subjective directed. Two people who teleport in the plane next to each other can fall in opposite directions. Moving on to the actual plane, the plane of air is referred to as the endless sky for a reason. This is actually one of the most hospitable planes for those from the material plane, as there is guaranteed oxygen. What is not guaranteed is ground. There are many floating platforms of stone, ice, and metal, but they tend to be few and far between. If you can't fly, hope you find yourself not far from a soft landing. Specifically on one of the three major cities. Either Arum Kalish, the capital of the Jinn and an airship nest, the sparkling principality of Hatsunia, an ice method nation where they actually find respect for methods, and Port Eclipse, a sky pirate nest. Other places include the Storm of Fangs, which is the largest of the region's permanent storms, the ruins of Nimba, one of my favorite, a massive temple dedicated to the psychopomp ushers, which now falls eternally in various directions, occupied by a large army of gargoyles who raid any landmass or ship they get close to. And the Sea of Night, Night's Embrace, a mysterious patch of permanent darkness sailors try to steer clear of. Speaking of night, the plane is mostly enshrouded in permanent day due to several distant flaming orbs of unknown origin. And speaking of hazards, there are places through the plane with dead air pockets, places where sky vessels do not work, and, most importantly, the air is not breathable. Well, that's a nice overall impression of the plane of air, and further discussions can be made with a specific video on the plane. There is one topic I would like to go in depth with, and that I'm going to use one of my side tangents for it. These are the spheres. Giant bronze and steel spheres float across the plane. They have existed since before the beginning of the Jin Empire, and contain a faded script of unknown origin. When some of the oldest gods are asked about them, they show regret and say nothing. Divination magic drives the users insane. The most that's able to be gleaned out of the divination is descriptions of bloody teeth. And structures built on them and people who settle there. One day they just suddenly disappear from all existence with no warning. Currently, Pathfinder agents are studying the spheres. Some determine that their movements can be read to reveal hidden knowledge. Everything about these spheres are a large question mark. But sometimes here on Loremaster's Lair, presenting a question is just as important as giving out answers. Speaking of which, moving on, we have the plane of water. Here, time is normal, the realm is unmeasurable, structures are lasting, alignment is slightly neutral, essence as one would expect is water dominant, with water spells being enhanced and fire spells being impeded. Gravity is also subjective here, though the fact that one can get around by swimming helps. Though, the region is still an endless ocean, with various currents pushing visitors throughout the area. I don't know why I said videos. It should be known that, despite its name, not all liquid here is water. There are being regions of poisons and oils to impede travel. Unlike the Edo Plains, the native genii, the Marids, are not the main power in the region. Their empire fallen, Evershade being more of a combination of multiple cities instead of one empire. Adventurers are all unlikely to stop in Vialesk for trade and air. It should be noted that light in the region is provided by 3 spears of fire known as Extar, Feroz, and Pilaxna. They provide light for most of the area. One area they do not, however, is the Phantom's Ebb, a place where no light can pierce. Because it is made out of undead known as shadows. Why are they out there? It is anyone's guess. Rounded out with the giant psychic jellyfish, known as Lion's Mouth Hole, and you will see that there are a few mysteries to discover under the sea. Third, the plane of Earth. Here, gravity and time are normal, the realm is immeasurable, structure is lasting, alignment is mildly neutral, essence is earth dominant with both magic being enhanced and air magic being impeded. Yeah. Long ago, the plane of Earth was once a solid shell, but interactions with the Edo planes caused the formation of various tunnels. In addition, the most central recess of the vault is the territory of the Zamorans, creatures known for turning tunnels into vast vaults, them also being responsible for the creation of Galorian's own Vault of Orb within the Darklands. There are 2 major powers here. The Empire of the Shaitan, whose capital is the Opulent Vault, a city of great wealth and resources, and demons. A group of searchers plan to consume the entire plane for themselves, creating a path known as the Violent Road. Since the entire plane is functionally underground, there is no day or night. However, there are powerful magnetic forces which allow the traditional compasses to function as normal, a rarity in many planes. And finally, we have the plane of fire. Gravity and time are normal, structure is lasting, the size is immeasurable, alignment is mildly neutral, essence is fire dominant with enhanced magic for fire and impeded magic for water. The plane of fire is the most dangerous of the 4 to outsiders, as not only is the floor literally lava, but the air is mostly either smoke or sulfur. If you need to breathe to live, this is not your place for a vacation. There are many structures here, mostly made by the species known as the Azers, dwarf-like beings who live in large fortresses, but who have been being taken by slaves fortress by fortress to continue their plane-wide metalwork. The most prominent of the structures they've made is the City of Brass, the powerful Ifrit city where all non-Ifrit are considered slaves. Other important cities include the Ninefold Tower, a center of worship for fire efforts, the Emberen Recesses, a place where the usually solitary magma dragons have created a shared civilization, and Zajara, an Axumite found in the town, safe for outsiders. The most noticeable landmark, however, is Lair Peak, the tallest volcano in the plains. Now that we've covered the four main elements, let's take a break to cover two topics which have commonalities between them. The first are dragons. There are 7 different categories of true dragons in Pathfinder, 8 if you include Starfinder, and 3 of them are Layer 2 planes, so we'll be covering them during these episodes as well. This week we have the dragons associated with the elemental planes, and the ones we have the most information on outside of the chromatic and metallic dragons, the primal dragons. There are 5. One associated with each elemental plane. I'm going to bring the fingers back for the dragons. One associated with each of the elemental planes, and one associated with a plane we will be talking about next week, the shadow plane. Using the same order we have been, first would be the cloud dragons of the plane of air. These dragons are famous for not being as schemers most dragons are. While they are just as smart, they tend to be more interested in following the flow than doing heavy planning. They create their lairs near mountaintops, so they tend to leave them alone longer than other species of dragons. They breathe thunderclouds, which deal electric damage, and the preferred loot is whatever they're feeling like at the time. And conversation. They like conversation. For the plane of water, we have fire dragons. These dragons are known for the building of communities, which they then rule as dictators of. Whether it turns out good or ill depends on the individual brine dragon. They prefer building lairs on shorelines, but tend to avoid places heavy in piracy, too chaotic for their personal tastes. They breathe salt water, the salt concentration high enough for it to be considered acid damage, and their preferred treasure is taxes from the citizens. For the plane of Earth, we have the crystal dragon. These dragons have 2 obsessions: their appearance and their early appearance at the places they make their lairs. They tend to make their lairs in caverns, especially ones with crystals in them. They breathe crystals, which cause piercing damage, and their favorite treasures are things they can see their reflections in. For the plane of fire, we have the magma dragons. They have a worse and more violent outburst than any other dragon type, which is saying something looking at some of the dragon rages out there, and therefore tend to live in even deeper isolation. They tend to keep on this isolation within volcanoes, meaning that their favorite treasures are those who are still retain their shape at high temperatures. They breathe out magma, strong enough to deal bludgeoning damage, but hot enough to deal fire. And finally, we have Umbo dragons. These creatures prefer the taste of the undead, but that doesn't mean they're not a threat to living. Umbo dragons have been known to start zombie plagues to fill their bellies. They are also known for using their darkened scales to attack and retreat into shadows. They tend not to stay as far away from their homes as the other primal dragons, and therefore in nations like Nadal, which are constantly connected to the shadow plane, are their preferred hunting grounds. Three of shadows contain negative energy and prefer to take their treasures off their undead meals. The more precious the memento, the better. The second commonality between these 4 planes are the gods. In times past, each of the elemental planes had 2 gods associated with it, one good and one evil. However, one day, Kalizandri, the brackish emperor of the plane of water, came up with a plan for sole dominion of his plane. So he allied with his counterparts of the other elemental planes, Ayuzil the Fossilized King, Hushud the Duchess of All Winds, and Yameri the Queen of the Inferno. to combine the powers to imprison the good elemental lords. And so 4 gem prisons were made. The only way to break each seal is a combination of each of the inner 3 elements, leaving the evil elemental lords in full dominion of their domains. However, the good were, and still aren't, forgotten, them still having followers to pray in ancient temples and look for the hiding places of the gods' prisons. One, Wanganoi, the Zephyr's prince, with the assistance of the Pathfinder Society, has even escaped his eternal prison, but currently finds himself not 1-on-1, but 4-on-1, all evil wishing to keep virtual soul rulership. That said, there are also 2 gods outside the elemental lords associated with these elemental planes. First is the Gnome Goddess Nimba Rombledazzle, her obsession with gems making the plane of Earth her unofficial home. Emphasis on unofficial in this case. The second is one who does make the plane of fire her official home, and therefore I'm going to go more into detail, which will make this our third side tangent. Feronia, the fertile flame, is a goddess who is rarely seen. Often taking the form of living fire, she also often appears as a black-skinned woman with milken eyes, a swan of flame, or a phoenix crowned in gold and sapphires. She is the ex-wife of the archdevil Dispata, who left hell on amicable terms before settling here. And with her, she brought her most famous child, the ephemeral Lord Ragathiel. However, the angel is not her only child. She protects unnumbered godchildren within her domain of the Cradle of Flames. And I mean protect. Several deities have tried to assassinate her children. None have succeeded. In addition, many deities have tried to make more children for her. However, her rule is that she comes to you. No one is allowed near her children. And she has 4 giant phoenixes and her herald, the Guardian Blaze, a creature with 6 wings and 4 obsidian talons, to make sure of it. Now, if those are out of the way, we still have 2 planes left to cover today. And almost at 30 minutes, so let's speed this up a little bit, without actually speeding it up because I trip over words. First up is the negative energy plane. Here, time moves normally, and alignment is mildly neutral. Structures lasting, with what little you would actually find here. Space required, it is unbound, the one that loops back on itself. And gravity is subjective directional. Essence, as one would expect, is majorly negative energy dominant, with small pockets of mildly negative where living creatures may survive. And to go with it, negative energy spells and abilities are enhanced, and positive energy is impeded. This plane is greatly associated with one thing: undead. Creatures that die here or stay too long become some form of undead. Cosmically, however, the plane is more of a balancing point. Without death, there can be no life. If there is no negative energy pole, souls created in a positive energy plane will have no reason to ever leave or be born. If there is one negative outside of undead, the nuns of Titans are chained here, and every-loving Hundans come here for vacation. But the native species is considered Sedanos, temporary gargoyle-like beings spun from the crystalline negative energy known as light quartz. This material is basically walking negative energy, negative levels. It is, of course, negative energy, but negative levels, with having too much causing one in creatures not too far from a large deposit. While it's too fragile for armor, anti-level weaponry is a possibility of it. As for locations, we have Zolkanith and the city of, which is the city of Sekudaimas, and Malakar's Keep, home of a lich, who has also specially won his tower so that even he can survive in a high concentration of negative energy. There's also two more that I wish to go into a little more detail on. So, final side tangent of the day. The greatest mysteries of the void. First, Fallen Dharmask, an entire planet from the ethereal plane, which has found itself trapped in the void. With the remains of devils and Cliptoffs, who had the misfortune of being invaded when it happened, to supplement the native populace, there is a large amount of undead, and countless treasures, but countless undead guarding them. However, there is one spot, a temple dedicated to Pharasma, where dead bodies lay unmoving. And desecrating the altar are the words, "Glory to the cycle, and the feast upon the damned." No one knows why this temple does protect against the forces of the plane's own negative energy. Also unknown is our second mystery, Eternity's Doorstep. This is a pure black, giant glass sphere. Across the sphere are sentences, written over and over again in thousands of languages. What you think of as life is a great deception. The faithful have already been claimed, taken, and saved. You are ours. Any undead which is close to the sphere is pulled in, comparisons being made to black holes, and completely destroyed on contact. Well, sometimes it is an eon-long agonizing death, but there has been no escape found thus far. Where it comes from, we have but two clues. First, divination gives it the strong, solid rating of evil, and the kind of evil that looks back. Second, the undead called Devourers are immune to the pole of the sphere, yet still make pilgrimages to locations where they seem to be listening to someone speaking back to them, constantly whispering one word in prayer: Shepherd. Well, after that, I think we need to move on to a more positive topic, the positive energy plane, the forge where all souls are made. And it is the equal of opposite and opposite of the negative. Time moves normally, gravity is subjective, size unbalanced, structural lasting, but still is actually there. Alignment mildly neutral, magic favors positive and despair is negative. And the essence is strongly positive with small pockets of mildly positive where people can actually live. That's right. The positive energy plane is just as hostile as the negative, easily burning up visitors except in a few specific parts. Though they do not accept visitors anyway, considering how many creatures would like to stop the creation of new souls. And this plane is effectively under quarantine. When it comes to native beings, there are the xenophobic Jortis, but native species of note are the Manuscritas, the demigod, and their demigod level forms, the Manuscrita Kamaras. These are mortal beings who have achieved enlightenment and are born here to spend their millennia-long lifespan in their own paradise. However, they consider themselves just visitors, and besides them, no gods are allowed in the forge. One last interesting landmark is the Jortis prized flower garden. Each flower contains the essence of a god, with one flower for everyone in existence. You cannot manipulate the gods with the flowers, but watching how the flowers grow or wilt is a good way of reading the fortunes of that god. Another reason gods are banned. And that is everything. No, not really. Not even close. As said, this is going to be a multi-parter. we technically have more inner planes left, but these transient planes can easily make their own video, separate from these elemental focus / essence focus planes. So expect that next week, and then the big one the week after. I look forward to seeing you all there.